Hey Mohawk students, it's Howie, your events manager for your Mohawk Student Association, and thank you so much for joining us tonight. This is the fourth event in our Listen and Engage MSA Speaker Series, and we have a great speaker that we will get to very shortly. And we're all going to be focusing tonight on kindness and self-acceptance, and we will get to that shortly. Recognizing our relationships with Indigenous communities and in an effort to pay respect to the original peoples of our territory upon who we physically are present. I would like to acknowledge that Mohawk College is located on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee peoples, protected by the treaties and the Dish with the One Spoon Covenant Wampum. This land continues to be home to the diverse Indigenous peoples, example, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, whom we recognize as contemporary stewards of the land and vital contributors of our society. With this, we respect the longstanding relationships that Indigenous nations have with each other and to this land, as they are the original caretakers. Again, we have a great speaker coming up. Candy Palmater is a Canadian comedian and broadcaster. She was the creator and writer of her own national TV show for ABTN, The Candy Show, and she also hosted a daily interview series, The Candy Palmater Show, on CBC Radio 1. And we have such a treat for everyone tonight. So we would like to welcome Candy to our event today.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'd like to welcome everybody to my bedroom. My bed's right there.
It's a totally different world right now.
It really is.
It's insane. I can say I'm also at home. So neither of us are actually in the studio or anywhere near that. But welcome to 2020 virtual events.
Yep. Absolutely.
How are you? What's going on in your life right now?
I'm great. I mean, I'm an extrovert and I've been in shutdown for 11 months now. So going a little crazy. Would love to be out in a building where there's a live audience. But I'm also really thankful that so far I'm healthy. Everybody in my family is healthy. None of us have contracted it, and we're all staying safe. I'm wearing my mask, doing my bit.
That's good. Honestly, if anybody can do that, that's all they need to do, is just, care, love your family, love your friends, stay safe, stay protected. And hopefully this all goes away very, very, very soon. So
absolutely.
And you can get back to doing what you normally do,
yes,
which is performing in front of audiences and being a part of, programs and TV shows and all that fun stuff, but actually like in person and not in your bedroom.
It's going to be weird to put pants on again, but I look forward to it.
All right. We have a great, next 45, 50 minutes with a whole array of questions for you. But what I want to focus on specifically is kindness and self-acceptance. And, through everything that we've read about you and in our pre-meetings, is that those are two things that you really focus on and strive for in your messaging. So, we'll come back to that in some of the questions, but that's really what we're gonna focus on today. But I wanted to start off and just ask you about your childhood, your upbringing, and a little bit kind of about your history and especially your culture. And if you can speak to all those,
absolutely.
Our students at Mohawk are excited to hear it.
I always like to say, when I tell my story, I can't really get into my story until I tell my parents' story. So my dad was Mi'kmaq. He was from Eel River Bar First Nation. My mother was from the town of Dalhousie, and those sit next to one another up on the northern shore of New Brunswick. And they met on the baseball pitch. And when my mother saw my father, she was in love. They were 6 years old, and she was like, this is the guy. And when my father saw my mother, he said, she's a really good ball player. He just didn't see her quite in the same way. So they played ball together for years and years. And then World War II broke out. And when World War II broke out, they both signed up and joined the military. My mom made bullets in a factory here in Canada, and my dad went overseas to fight in the war. When they came back, my mom had blossomed. And when Daddy saw her, he asked her out on a date where they went to the movies, and he tried to kiss her goodnight, and she wouldn't let him. And so he said, all right, then, will you marry me? And she said, yes. So she was elated. She was so excited. But when she went home to tell her parents were not elated. Mm-hmm. It was the 1940s, and the idea of their white daughter marrying an Indigenous man was just not something that they wanted to tolerate. They argued about it. And finally, my mother simply left her family. She eloped, married my dad, and in doing so, lost her family in the deal. Right. So when they first married, my dad was an alcoholic. He had had his first drink when he was about 10, and he was a full-blown alcoholic after coming back from the war. So the first part of their marriage was extreme poverty and extreme alcoholism and baby after baby. They had 6 babies all together in rapid succession. And then incredibly, in his 30s, my dad got sober. And when my dad got sober, he did a couple of things. He moved the family up on a mountain in the woods because he wanted to get away from his drinking buddies. So the family was no longer on the reserve or in the town. Mm-hmm. We were in a little place called Point Lenim. He opened the first Harley-Davidson dealership in Atlantic Canada. And he said to my mother, when he was 46 and she was 43, I would like one more baby because I want to see what it's like to be a father sober. And she said yes, and that's when I came along. Now, it seems like such a sweet story, except I was 24 inches and 11 pounds, so my mother has rethought that decision many times. But it meant I was born into a really unique situation because there were no children in my family. My brothers and sisters were all adults by then. There were no kids around me because I lived in this isolated place up on the mountain. In fact, the mountain that we're on is the end of the Appalachian Mountains. Okay. And the only people I saw were my brothers and sisters and the bikers that used to come and go from the shop. So the first 5 years of my life was spectacular. My mom brought me home in a December snowstorm. It was just my birthday last week. She was worried I was going to freeze to death in the old farmhouse that we lived in. But when they got me in by the stove, they sort of made an informal pact that everything they had gone through, classism, racism, they were going to do everything they could to protect me from that. Mm-hmm. And everything they didn't have access to, they were going to try to work hard to make sure I had access. So the first 5 years of my life, it was like a fairy tale. Like every single day, they told me I was the most beautiful baby in the world. I was the smartest baby in the world. My presence on the planet was a gift to the universe. And like all kids, I believed what I heard. But then I turned 5, and they told me I had to come down off the hill and go into town and go to school. Right. And the fairy tale was like, it came to a quick stop. I heard half-breed on my first day of school, and I didn't know what it meant. I knew it wasn't good. I could tell by the way they were spitting it at me. But I just had to sit on it, wait till I got home. When I got home, I asked my parents, why are they calling me a half-breed? And that's when they sat me down and they explained the fact that they were different. Now, if you could see pictures of my mom and dad, my dad was this really dark-skinned Mi'kmaq man. My mother was this pale white lady. But when you're a little kid, you don't see that. You just see mommy and daddy. Right. But they explained that this difference would have an impact as life went forward. Now, lucky for me, in about grade 3, school sports started. And once school sports started, I was on my way because I was a gifted athlete. And as you know, when you are a good athlete in school, things start to get very, very easy. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of like the early baby years in the candy show.
So after that, going through, what was high school like for you?
Well, by the time I got to high school, I was really loving school. I was playing a lot of different sports, but volleyball was my big sport. Okay. When I was in grade 11, we had won the provincial volleyball championship. So by the time I got to grade 12, I was president of my student council. I was playing on all sports teams. What's that?
I said, so was I, actually.
Oh, cool. Yeah. And I was also captain of most of the sports teams. I had decent grades. I had no idea what I wanted to do when I grew up. I still don't really, which is why my career changes all the time. But I did know I wanted to play volleyball at a higher level. So I started applying to universities that had strong volleyball programs. And that's when I got called to the guidance counselor's office. And the guidance counselor said to me, I think you should be more realistic in your goals because you people don't do well at university. And I was so naive that I said to him, what are you talking about? You're a jock. You went to university. Because I thought that's what he meant, the fact that I was a jock.
Right.
And when it was clear to me that what he meant is because I'm Mi'kmaq, I just turned on my heel and I walked out of his office. And I said to myself, I guess I'm on my own. Because my dad couldn't read or write, and my mom only had a grade 7 education. So they weren't going to be able to help me with this. So I just went on myself, applied for the universities I wanted to go to, and I put that man out of my thoughts, except for 2 more times in my life. In my undergraduate degree, when I received my trophy for most valuable player in varsity volleyball, I thought about him for a second. And then a few years later, when I graduated as valedictorian of my class at Dalhousie Law School, I thought about him for a second. And I thought, he should be more realistic in his goals because he's not very good at what he does, is he? So it was a sad moment when it happened,
Right.
but it was a great gift for me because I figured out in that moment at 17 years old that guy didn't have a clue who I was. Right. He didn't know what I was made of. He didn't know how hard I could work. He didn't know what I was willing to give up to get what I wanted. And then I realized, that's true of everybody. Like my friends don't know that. My family doesn't know that. Only I know what I'm really capable of. Mm-hmm. So I decided at 17, I am always going to be the one in charge. No matter how long or how short this life is, there will only ever be one captain of this ship, and you are looking at her. And whether I sail that into greatness or I crash it on the rocks, that's going to be based on assessments I make about myself. Mm-hmm. But to do that, to take the wheel, I had to embark on a very difficult journey. I had to start the most important love affair of my life. And that was the love affair with myself. Mm-hmm. And loving yourself, it's not an easy game to play. But with time, it's like a muscle. With time, if you keep at it, you get to a place where you really feel that you are in that deep love with yourself. And I don't mean that from an egotistical perspective. Right. I just mean truly and absolutely loving and accepting who you are right now today. I don't mean when you quit smoking or when you lose 20 pounds or you pass the next exam or you do better at whatever, or you think you're prettier or you think you're stronger. I mean, right now, right today, exactly where you are, broke, screwed up, whatever it is, love it. Love it all from head to toe. And that's when you can really take control of your own ship.
Honestly, that's great advice. It's hard. A lot of students, once they leave high school and, they kind of pick a path, yep. that's kind of, the next step and they go to post-secondary school and that's what they do. And they go through these experiences and I think for years that they're still learning, mm-hmm. who they are and what they can do and that it's okay to change and then it's okay to change your mind and it's okay to grow. But, that kind of focus about just loving yourself and accepting yourself, no matter what choice you make or matter what you go through is very important.
And defining for yourself what success is. Mm-hmm. I mean, I graduated, I finished my undergraduate work. I moved to Halifax. I got a job at Dalhousie University in human resources. Mm-hmm. I'm from a tiny little town. You get a job with a benefits package and a pension, like you're supposed to die with that in your grasp, right? So I worked at that for a couple of years, but I had always thought about law school. So at 27, I said, okay, I'm going to quit this job and go to law school. Well, my family lost it. You're leaving your pension? You're leaving your pension? I'm 27. I am not going to plan my life based on a pension that's going to come to me in 40 years. Yeah. People were all over the place trying to stop me. I had people saying, you'll never get in. I had people saying, you're going to be 30 when you graduate. I'm sorry, am I somehow not going to turn 30 if I don't go to law school? What a ridiculous argument.
Yeah.
What I realized is when they said, oh, you probably aren't going to get in, that means they don't think they could get in. So I applied, I went for it, I got in, and I got in thinking I was going to be an advocate, that I would, be a voice for people who didn't have a voice. I wasn't interested in working in a corporate firm until everybody started telling me, oh, it's a good job you don't want to do that because no Mi'kmaq person has ever done that. Mm-hmm. So then I thought, okay, well, now I have to go do that. So I did. I got hired. I was the very first person hired back at a corporate firm in Nova Scotia's history. Big hoopla on the television and the newspapers. And all of a sudden I woke up, I was 32 years old, and I was a corporate lawyer. And I said, what have I done? This fits me like a bad suit. I don't want to do this. So I waited till my whole family was home on a Sunday afternoon. And I called home and I said, Mom, Dad, brothers and sisters, I love you all so much. Thank you for all your support. I'm leaving the practice of law to become a comedian. And P.S., I broke up with my boyfriend because I'm gay. I love you. Goodbye. And I hung up. I just thought, I'll rip this Band-Aid off in one fell swoop. And I started on a new path. And that path has brought me to where I am now, which is very, very happy and very, very fulfilled. So even though being a lawyer in a big corporate firm is what a lot of people would define as success, I didn't feel fulfilled. It wasn't talking to my soul. It wasn't making me move toward the person I want to be. My parents were great, right? They told me when I was young, look, you can dig a ditch or you can fly a rocket to the moon. We don't care. That's your life to live. Mm-hmm. But what kind of person you are, that's our work. And we care about that. So they told me to imagine the woman that I want to become. And that every question I have, every time I have to make a choice, make it based on moving closer to her. And when I was at the firm, and this is no disrespect to lawyers, there's lots of people, friends of mine, who love being lawyers. It does it for them. It wasn't doing it for me. I was moving too far away from that person I wanted to be. So I walked away at 32 years old and got on stage for the very first time as a comic at 32. I had never done it before.
Do you remember, what was that moment like? What club was it?
I sure do. It wasn't even a club. So first of all, let me just say one thing about when I was at law school, just because I know you all are in school right now. I want you to understand that this is how law school went for me. Okay, I woke up in a pretty good mood in the morning, and I'd go through the day and I'd have people at law school tell me that I'm taking their buddy's place because everybody assumed because I was Indigenous, I got there on an equity ticket. I felt like I had to have my transcript on my forehead to prove how smart I was. Mm-hmm. And at the end of every day, I would be furious and I would run out of the law school, my hair on fire, and right across from the law school was the Native Counseling Unit. And there was an elder there, Sarah Abrams. And I would run in there and I'd slam the door and I'd say, that's it, I'm quitting. And Sarah would say, oh yeah, let's have a cup of tea first. And she'd plug in the kettle and we'd talk, not even about school, we'd talk about whatever. And by the time we were done the tea, I'd be kind of relaxed. And then she'd look at her watch and say, too late to quit today, quit tomorrow. And I'd say, okay, but tomorrow I'm doing it. And I did that every day for 3 years until I found myself valedictorian of my class graduating. So, two things there is keep your eyes open for those people who can be that mentor for you. Right. And the second thing is she gave me the best advice I think I've ever had in my life. She told me that when you are born, you get a backpack. Everybody gets one, but your backpack, it's only big enough to carry your crap. But she said, through life, people are going to try to get you to carry their crap. You have to tell them, no, sorry, my backpack is full. I can only carry my own. And so every time somebody tells me, you're crazy, you can't do that, you won't get in, that is them trying to get me to carry their crap. And I simply won't do it. There is just no room at the inn. So when I decided I was going to be a comedian, here's how I started. I started telling people I'm a comedian. Now, I took a day job with the Nova Scotia Department of Education. So I felt good about that work because I was impacting Indigenous students and their educational experience. And at night and on the weekends, I was going to try to pursue my comedy. So I would tell everybody, I'm a comedian. If you have an event, you could hire me. I could come in and entertain. I got a call. It was the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission. They said, we're having a conference of 200 people. We would like you to be the after dinner entertainment. And I said, sure. And they said, how much? And I thought, the first one's free, because I didn't know if I was going to suck. And I didn't want to suck and then ask for the money. I got over that. But I went down, I wrote 20 minutes worth of material. I went down, I did my material. I got a standing ovation. And people were asking me, how do we book you? I said, oh, just go to the website, thecandyshow.com. And then I ran home and I called every computer person I knew. And I was like, somebody has to build me a website. It has to be called The Candy Show. Thank God the domain was available. And I was off to the races. And it was fabulous. All of a sudden, I found myself at the Halifax Comedy Festival. And that's what you want. You want to get into a festival because it's televised and the whole bit. And I had always been naturally funny. You know, I was the cut up in class. Mm-hmm. So it was a hometown crowd. I went out, I performed, I got a great round of applause, as you would expect of people I know. And then the other comedians went out and they were so good, like so much better than me. And I was shocked by how good they were. So I started talking to them about, like, what does your week look like? And they said, well, you know, we're on stage 3 or 4 times and the rest of the time we're writing, and only about, 15% of what you write is going to be good enough to make it to the stage. So you have to be writing all the time. And that's when I realized I had a choice to make. I could stay around Halifax and be a local comic and be happy with that, which that would have been fine. Or if I really wanted to go for it, I was going to have to put the work in. Mm-hmm. And I decided to go to work. And man, I'm so glad that I made that decision, because that led to my television show and all the wonderful things that have followed since. And I always say to people, like, don't think wherever you are right now at school that you have to have it all figured out, right? So I didn't even start comedy I didn't start law school till I was 27. I didn't do comedy for the first time till I was 32. I got my television show at 39. I got my first national radio show at 48, and I got my first book deal with HarperCollins Canada at 50. It's never too late. I cannot wait to see what's going to happen when I turn 60. I don't know what it's going to be, but I know it's going to be fabulous.
That's an amazing story.
Thank you.
It's inspirational. And I've read a little bit about you before today, but to hear you talk about it, like that's the icing on the cake right there. So do you think there was a pivotal moment that you can remember in your life where you decided that your story needed to be heard? Like what was that moment when you said, I'm going to become an advocate and I'm going to speak on behalf of people from where I'm from and from my culture and the groups and the peers that I am a part of? Do you have a moment where you said, I have a voice and I'm going to use it?
I think for me, when I was young and I used to hear the stories of my family, like what my parents and my grandparents and my older brothers and sisters went through, I used to be pretty taken by their stories, because my life, yes, I faced racism. Yes, I faced homophobia, but what they went through was brutal. And I always used to think when I was young, someday I hope I can tell their story. And how I thought I was going to do that was through writing. And this is just a wonderful little story in terms of that believing in yourself and self-reliance. I always knew I loved to write, but I couldn't spell, and I still don't spell very well. And that might not seem like much to you in this generation, but when I was young, spelling was like really important. And they did these little spelling bees, and the winners got the Smarties, and I never got the Smarties, which is why I hated that everybody gets a sports trophy now, because I'm like, wait a minute. They got the Smarties, I got the sports trophies. That's the way it should roll out. But I always had a composition book, because I used to write all the time and tuck it under my arm. And I had an English teacher who I just loved, Mr. Lushington, and he asked me if he could see my composition book, and I said no, because I didn't want him to think I was stupid, because I thought the fact that I couldn't spell meant that I wasn't smart. Mm-hmm. So he didn't push me for it. He just said okay. And a couple of weeks later, we were doing The Merchant of Venice, Shakespeare. And on the way to class, he said, "How do you like Shakespeare?" I said, "Oh my God, I love him. Like, it seems like every movie I ever seen, like he wrote the plot all those years ago." And he said, "Yeah, he's a pretty good writer, isn't he? You realize he couldn't spell, right?" And I said, "What?" And he said, "Shakespeare spelled phonetically. He didn't follow the rules of spelling." And I remember laying in bed going, "Oh my goodness, could this be real? Could this be true? Because if it is, then maybe I could be a writer." So the next day I handed him my composition book. 2 days later, he handed it back to me. And this is all he said to me. He said, "You're not a bad writer." And that day, after volleyball practice, when my parents picked me up, I said, "You have to take me to the Dalhousie News office." It was the newspaper in our town. Mm-hmm. And they said, "Why?" And I said, "Because you guys don't know this about me yet, but I'm a writer and people in this town need to be reading me." And so I marched in. I asked to see the editor. She came out to see me. I said, "You don't have any columns in your newspaper that are from a youth perspective, and I'm going to solve that problem for you. I am going to write a weekly column called On the Hill, because my school is on a hill and I live on a hill." And she said, "Do you have any writing with you?" And I said, "No, I'll bring some back tomorrow." So the next day I brought some back, and this was 1982, I think. And she said, "Oh, you can't spell." And I said, "Well, you're the editor. That's your job." And she laughed and said, "How about $25 a week?" And that's when my writing career started. Mm-hmm. As I got into my work at Dalhousie University in human resources, I realized that I did have this gift for speaking, the very thing my teachers tried to get me to stop doing all the time when I was young. And I knew that I could be a bridge, because my mother was white and my father was Mi'kmaq, and we all love one another. And I saw how it worked on both sides. Mm-hmm. And I thought, I went through some anger. I was sort of, my mother was the love of my life. My parents are both passed now, but my mom was the love of my life. And her and I were so very close. And I remember going through this angry period and saying to her, "I don't know what to do with the fact that you're the colonizer. And that your blood is running through me." And she said 2 things. She said, "First of all, you're always telling people not to judge all Indigenous people by the actions of one." She said, "Well, I would say ditto from my perspective." And then she said, "Maybe that's your role. Maybe you're supposed to be a bridge. So maybe you should keep your eyes open for how that's going to come to you." And that really was like the beginning of me thinking, "Oh, I'm going to do something with this." And when I was in grade 12 and I was president of the student council, there was a big walkout. A bunch of students from the commercial side of the school walked out because there was some construction going on in their area and a piece of their ceiling caved in. And they came and got me out of class because there were 850 kids in my high school. I had gotten 800 votes. So they had all voted for me. And when I came downstairs, like a horde came to get me in class, but when I came downstairs, all the kids were out on the grass. My principal came out and he handed me a bullhorn and he said, "You've got 10 minutes to get them in or I have to call the police." And I said, "Give me the full 10 minutes. And I went out and I chilled them down enough and I convinced them to come back in. And then I told him, "No more class today. We're all going to sit here in this lobby and work this out." Mm-hmm. And that was the very moment when I realized, oh, not only do I have an ability to speak, but it has power. I can do something with this. And it really started from there. So before I ever did comedy, before I ever went to law school, I was already starting to advocate. I had put together a little training course and I was getting hired to do that, little half-day sessions for provincial government employees. I eventually developed that into a full-day session. And I just thought, if this is my thing, then I have to make it count. And sorry for this long answer, but one other moment that was really pivotal for me, I was maybe in comedy about 1.5 years when Stephen Harper signed the apology to the First Nations residential school survivors. Right. And they were going to gather all the Atlantic Canadian residential school survivors in Moncton. And over 3 days, they were going to have to dredge up and recount everything that had happened to them so that they could be gauged of like what their compensatory amount would be. And they called me and said, we don't want to send people home raw. So we want you to come on the Friday night. And after them doing that for 3 days, we want you to do comedy for them. And I said, oh my God, that's not a good fit. I can't possibly do that. I mean, that they're going to be so, deeply wounded and hurt. And I just don't think I can do it. So I hung up, and a few hours later, an elder called me and she said, comedy is the gift you've been given. We have used comedy to heal for years. And if that's the gift you have, that's the gift you owe. Mm-hmm. And when an elder tells you that, you put your stuff in the car and you drive to Moncton. And I went in and I did. It was supposed to be a 20-minute set. It went on for an hour. It was a great set. I got a big standing ovation. And then I asked people, can we not clap for the comedy? Can we all stand and acknowledge the survivors in the room? And then one after another afterwards, they were coming up to me and they were hugging me. And they were saying, oh my God, I'm your biggest fan. I just love you, blah, blah, blah. But as they were hugging me, they were whispering in my ear how long they had done in residential school. Like, I did 8 years in Shuby. I did 11 years in Shuby. It was so emotional for me. I got in the car, I cried all the way back to Halifax. And when I was laying in bed with my wife that night, I said, you know what I learned tonight? I learned how serious this funny business is. So whether you come to see me do a talk or you come to see me do comedy, I am still trying to push the same message. And that message is one of acceptance. And the reason I talk about self-acceptance is because I do not think you can accept other before you accept self. Mm-hmm. So when people push hate on me, I feel sad for them because I realize they're in a state of hating themselves. Because once you're in a state where you love yourself, you don't push hate onto the world, you push love out into the world.
That's beautifully said. It's definitely, honestly, it's a powerful message.
Thank you.
One thing I picked up on, and you said the word bridge. And maybe that's what you are, is to be the bridge. You speak to Native rights, you speak to gay rights, and these are the topics that I think, and not just me, but our peers in our association and our students, like these are the topics that should be discussed about. These are the topics that should be forefront, and we should be having these conversations.
Mm. And it's also, go ahead. No, go ahead. No,
you're also a comedian.
Yes.
Right? So it's this is why we wanted to share your story, is that bridge is a strong word here, because we have all this going on and all these topics that need to be discussed and people want to discuss. And then on this side, you're funny, you're a comedian, you're this and that. So how does it all come together for you?
I think comedy, when it's done right, it's supposed to shine a light. It's supposed to show society back to itself. Mm-hmm. And I feel comedy is supposed to push against boundaries. And when I'm doing comedy, I have that in my mind all the time. And I'm a feminist, and I have my best joke ever is a joke that I call vagina augmentation. And it's not an easy thing. I'm telling a joke about plastic surgery, and I'm using words like labia and clitoris, and I need to make people laugh, but I need them to think about what I'm actually saying. Mm-hmm. And I was with my mom once. She was visiting me, and we were in a restaurant, and a guy came up to me. I'd say maybe 24, 25, young white guy with a bunch of his friends. And he said, oh my God, Candy Palmater. And he put it here, he shook hands, and he said, I brought my boys to the comedy festival last week to your night because you were on the blue night. And I told them, oh, she's blue, man. She's got a potty mouth. She'll give us a good time. And he said, you did. That you were so raunchy, and we were laughing our heads off. And then he said at 2:00 in the morning, I was laying in bed and I was thinking about Native rights and women's rights. And I was thinking, why am I thinking about this crap? And then I realized you did that. And I give him the biggest hug because I loved that in that moment, he recognized what I had done with that piece of comedy. So you'll never see me in Yuck Yucks. I don't go there because that's not my audience.
Mm-hmm.
I've been able to really carve out my own path with my comedy. And there's something about when you try to swallow an aspirin dry, it tastes horrible and it's really hard to get down. But if you smush up your aspirin in some watermelon, it tastes so good and it goes down so easy, but you still get the medicine. So when I'm doing comedy, I'm smushing up the aspirin in some watermelon. And I'm always trying to shine a light. You'll hear me make jokes like I gained about 200 pounds since I have graduated from law school. I was diagnosed with extreme arthritis. It stopped all my activity. I started to gain weight. I had one hip replaced. The other one needs to be replaced. And all of a sudden, I couldn't get control of my weight. Now, when I was young, I was fat phobic. I had two older sisters who were overweight. I was fit. I was in good shape. I constantly rode them. I was always saying, like, why can't you just lose the weight? What's wrong with you? Why don't you? Just all the time. And then all of a sudden, I find myself with all this weight. And God love my sisters. They have never once said to me, I told you so, or put it back on me. But the arthritis to me has been one of the greatest gifts of my life, because if we were live in the room together, you would have seen me walk in on a cane. I don't move very quickly and I can't move anywhere. Even here in my room, I have a cane right next to me. It has made me so compassionate. It has made me a kinder person. When I was young and strong and fit and finishing first all the time, I thought it was always going to be that way. And to be honest, I didn't give a lot of thought to the people that couldn't keep up with me. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, I have to rely on people. When I'm flying out, because before COVID, my life is getting on a plane and going somewhere every week. And I have to ask for help in the airport because I can't get my bag off the turnstile without help. And it has made me a better person. So even though I deal with chronic pain and, all these things, it is every time I wake up in the morning, I think to myself, I've got to figure out what is the lesson that I am supposed to learn from my hardships. So I just want to go away from your question for a moment, because one of the things nobody told me when I was in high school, and so I want to tell it to every student that's watching right now, there are only two things that are for sure in your life. Someday, hopefully a long time from now, you will die and you are going to fail. And you are going to fail spectacularly. And that is okay. That is when your self-love has to really kick in. I had a brother who was 21 years older than me, and he was an incredible skier. And he put me on my first skis when I was 4. And I was all turned out, my fancy clothes, my sunglasses, no front teeth because I was only 4. He was a big, big, muscly man. He put his hand on my chest and poof, he pushed me down in the snow. And I said, what are you doing? I thought you were going to teach me how to ski. He said, I'm going to teach you how to ski, sweetheart. But first, I'm going to teach you how to get up, because falling is inevitable when you're learning how to ski. But if you know how to get up, you'll ski without fear. So when I was 4, I thought he was talking about skiing. 22 years after cancer has taken him from me, I realized he was teaching me about life. I live my life without fear of falling because I know how to get up. And sometimes when I go down hard, and I question, can I get up? And when that happens, I do not hesitate. I put my hand out and I say, somebody give me a hand because I need some help. And there's no shame in asking for that help. And you know what's amazing? Every single time I put that hand out, somebody has grabbed it and has helped me up. And once I'm up and I'm steady on my feet, I realize my job is to then look around to see who else might be down and need a hand. Mm-hmm. And the more that we can all get into that mindset, which I think all comes from that self-love, the more we're going to be able to understand the places in which we're different, right? First, you plug into all the places in which we're the same. And then eventually that will allow you to see past the differences and to see when someone else needs a hand.
I'm speechless. I'm just listening and I'm speechless. So that's obviously a good thing. I'm really enjoying this chat.
I'm glad.
Right before we get to, we're going to invite some of our Mohawk students into the event, but I wanted to talk about one more thing, and this question actually is it was a collaboration between the MSA and our Indigenous Education Department, and we got talking, and we went back and forth, and we said we want to ask this question, but we want to frame it so it relates to students, it relates to faculty, it relates to everybody, and it's about the power of language, and we're just in the best way you can, you know, in terms
Absolutely.
of the power of language. You know, why is it so important, or what is important to know about language, you know, in what we should be saying versus what we shouldn't be saying, and how that impacts, you know, our relationships with everybody, with each other.
You know, first of all, I would encourage every one of you, wherever you are right now, to understand and accept that your thoughts are not who you are. Those are just thoughts. But you have to watch your thoughts, because your thoughts affect what you say and what you do. And that affects your integrity. So you really have to be careful. Maya Angelou said it best when she said, words are real. They get on the walls, they get on the furniture, they get in the carpet, they get in your hair, they get on your clothes, and eventually they get inside of you. So you have to be very, very careful, first of all, with the words you use to talk about yourself. Now, you heard me talk a few minutes ago about how I used to be a great athlete and I was very fit, tall and strong, and now I am 200 pounds overweight. I have a deal with my body. She has been there for me for 52 years. I abused her. She still shows up. Every time I say we have to get on a plane and go, she comes. Every time I say we've got to get up and we've got to go fly to the coldest part of Canada, even though you're riddled with arthritis, my body shows up for me. And what I do in response for her, I make sure that she never hears a single negative word coming out of my mouth about her. And not only does she not hear me talk badly about her, she knows that I don't let anybody else talk badly about her either. You go on my social media, you will see there is nothing but positivity, because I have a one strike and you are out rule. I just block you. Occasionally I will respond, and I respond by saying, I'm sorry for your sadness. Because if you're alone in your basement on a Friday night in your underwear spewing out hate at somebody you don't know, I figure your life has got to be kind of sad. But generally I just block, because I'm all for criticism. Like, say to me, that wasn't your strongest set. I'll accept that. Say to me, you touch your hair too much when you're on television. I accept that. But shut your face because you're fat. Shut your face because you're queer. Shut your face because you're an Indian. I just block you, because you have no impact on my life. And it's not easy. Like, at the beginning, it's hard to teach yourself how to do that. As time goes on, you will find that you get stronger and stronger. But it all starts with how you talk about yourself. And once you start to be careful with how you talk about and to yourself, you'll find yourself being careful with how you talk to and about others. You know, I often joke that I don't have a filter, but in a way I do. I have no filter in that if you come to see me do comedy, you'll hear me talk about my now deceased 87-year-old mother's clitoris, and I'll do it without shame and I'll have a good time. But you will never hear me make fun of somebody in the audience. You'll never get picked on if you are in my audience. You'll never hear me throw myself under the bus. If I talk about my size, I talk about being large and in charge, baby. I never put myself down, because those words are important. And I live by the golden rule. What would I not want said or done to me? And I try hard, really, really hard, not to say or do that to anyone else, because your words will impact who you are. They will impact how you walk and move through the world. And I wake up in the morning and I start my mantra, and I have, you find what works for you, but for me, I have a little mantra that says, I am at peace, I want for nothing. Mm-hmm. And whenever somebody's coming at me with negativity or what have you, I'm smiling and nodding my head, and in my head, I'm saying, I'm at peace and I want for nothing. I'm at peace and I want for nothing. and I escape everything in that little mantra.
Mhm.
So language and words are important. Learning words. I try to, I cannot stand hearing somebody mispronounce someone's name when it's not Bill or Sue or Harry.
Yep.
It is not hard to say Aparata, my friend from India. I met her at the CBC and realized I heard her say her name one day, and then I heard what everybody else was calling her, and I said, Aparata, they're not saying your name right. And she said, no, they never have. I said to everybody, whoa, everybody, you're not saying your name right. And it's very easy to say Aparata. Take a minute, learn it. It's not hard. Learn the proper words, For a long time, we wanted to be Aboriginal. Now we're Indigenous. Things evolve, things change. Learn those words and learn what positive and loving words you can use for yourself in order to keep you going every day. Mm-hmm. Because what it's not about avoiding the fall. You're going to fall. You're going to fail, like I said. But the sweet spot, the juice in life, it happens in the fall. That's where you learn. That's where you grow. That's where you figure out how tough you are. And boy, I have some really beautiful words I speak to myself whenever I fall. And those words are this: I can do hard things. And boy, that is so much more important than being beautiful or being rich or anything else. I've been tested and I have not been found wanting. I can do hard things.
Thank you. That's very powerful. Tying this all in, we are here to talk about kindness and self-acceptance, but we're also here for students. And, as part of the Mohawk Student Association, we want our students to be involved. We want our students to have a voice. We want our students to engage and participate. And so I'd like to welcome our student panel right now. If they can all, there they come, yay! We have Garrett, and we have Doreen, and we have Alicia, all part of our Mohawk College family, all from different areas, different backgrounds, different programs. I can let them speak to that on by themselves, but we just wanted to bring everybody to the table and ask some questions and go from that. So I'm going to start with Garrett. Garrett is our first one.
Thank you so much, Ty. Hi, Candy.
Hi, Garrett.
My question for you, and you touched on it throughout the discussion, but when did you learn to accept yourself? And then is there any advice you have for people who may be unsure or scared to speak their truth?
Yeah, I don't think accepting yourself happens like a switch. I think it's a gradual process that you work on. And for me, I spent the young part of my life accepting myself as an Indigenous person. Then I had to accept myself as a queer person. And I was 32 when that process started. So it's just a matter of every single day. It's like doing the dishes. You're never done. You do them today. You have to do them again tomorrow. And it's just working at it every day and understanding that this is your one precious life. We don't get another go. There's no extra lives to be earned, right? This is it. And I am not going to squander it. I have a nephew that died at 25 and a brother that died at 50. And I feel so privileged to be 52. And I refuse to waste a single minute of the precious time I have hating myself or wishing that I was something else. Because if I was something else, I wouldn't have all the things that I have. Right. So it's fundamental. I would not be here if I wasn't who I am, if I wasn't Indigenous, if I wasn't queer, if I hadn't met my wife. So it's just that all day in, day out work of always working on yourself. That answers the first part of your question. I forgot what the second part was.
The second part was, is there any advice you have for people who may be unsure or scared to speak their truth? Yeah,
when I first started being a comic, I was looking at the way other comics did it, and I was trying to do it their way. And then I came to this epiphany because I read a book that Russell Peters wrote, and Carlin, one of the greatest comedians of all time, gave him some advice and said, only tell the jokes that only you can tell. And that's when I realized, why am I trying to sound like these 24 and 25-year-old white guys? I am, at the time, I was like a 35-year-old Indigenous queer woman. I'm going to tell those jokes, and an audience will find me. And there's nobody else I can be. I am always going to be second rate at being somebody else, but I absolutely can be the best me that I want to be. And I've also realized that I can live with being disappointed in others, but I find it really hard to be disappointed in myself. So you've got to just, and you don't have to be an extrovert. You don't have to speak your truth on a mountaintop. You don't have to stand at a microphone in a room full of 2,000 people. You don't have to write an article for New Yorker Magazine. You have to stand up for yourself, though. When somebody wants to give you negativity, that's when you stand in your truth. And that's when you say, not around me. I got no room for you. I sift you out, right? Whether it be friend or foe, family or not, you have to say you cannot accept that. Only enough room in your backpack for your crap. Do not carry anybody else's. That's part of speaking your truth. Just by saying, I love and respect me, and if you can't love and respect me, you can't be on the candy train. That's how it works.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Next, we're going to go to Alicia.
All right. Hi, Candy.
Hi, Alicia.
So my question is, do you think the relationship between education and Indigenous people is improving? And what do you think the reason that may or may not be happening?
Yes, it's improving, because I look at, how my dad's life was, and then my older brothers and sisters, and I look at myself in comparison. So it is improving. The fact that I'm at a university, giving a talk, and it started with a land acknowledgement, that would have never even happened 5 years ago, let alone 25 years ago, or back when I was at university. So yes, it is happening. And I think it's happening because more and more Indigenous people are being educated. More and more Indigenous people are becoming lawyers and pushing legal cases that are causing statutory change to happen. And when statutory change happens, change in everyday life has to happen. Is it happening fast enough for me? No, it is not. I mean, everybody celebrated the fact that, the sports teams finally changed their names this year. Oh my God, a man had to be suffocated, murdered in the street for people to give up their team mascot? That's ridiculous. For years, we have been saying, you cannot call your team the Indians. You cannot call them the Braves. You cannot be doing a tomahawk chop. Yet they could not hear us until we all collectively watched an innocent man be murdered in the street by the state. And that's what it took to get people to let go of their mascot. I mean, sit with that for a minute and think about that. If that's how hard it is to get you to move that little distance, imagine what it's like when we're trying to say, listen, their university education has to come and meet Indigenous people where they live. People who are in extreme communities with no potable water, you can't expect them to fly out of there and come to a big city and just make it. Education has to find everybody where they are. And, I'm hoping that the positive that's going to come out of COVID is we're all learning that we can do that we can be in all different areas and still connect. And if we can do this via Zoom now, why can't the kids in Attawapiskat get school that way when they need to, when they can't get out or when the weather holds them where they are? Why can't there be more courses? And why can't those courses be taught by Indigenous people? Why can't there be more Indigenous professors? When is there going to be an Indigenous president of a university, a mainstream college? All of that has to happen. We have to start pushing towards that. It's only been since 1960 that we even have the right to vote in this country. So we are playing catch up all the time. And I, for one, I'm out of patience. I need this to move along much quicker. I don't have children. So when people say the next generation, I don't have kids. I need to see this before I die.
Perfect. Thank you.
My pleasure.
And our final student of the evening, Doreen.
Hi, Candy.
Hi, Doreen.
Thank you so much for sharing. I really learned a lot. I have a question, but I have like a statement before,
Sure.
because listening in listening to everything that you said, I do share some similarities. I've been in banking for 7 years, and it really wasn't fulfilling for me. I've been a financial advisor with Scotiabank for 7 years, and I back in my country, Jamaica, and I just, as I said, it wasn't fulfilling. So I wanted to just help people more and create a greater impact on people's lives. And so I decided to come here to Canada to study social services.
Nice.
So I really could connect with you on so many levels. And as I listened to your story, I heard a lot of dynamics in terms of changes that you've gone through in your life. So first, I want to know what are some of the coping strategies that you used along the way? Because first, you had to accept being Indigenous, then you had to love yourself, then you had to accept yourself as a queer. So what are some of the coping strategies that you used along the way? Were they different? Were they the same in terms of applying them to your life? The career changes, all those things, like what helped you the most?
I try to keep my eyes open for people that can be allies to me and can be mentors to me. And sometimes those people come disguised, like someone comes into your life and you wouldn't even think. But for me, I'm constantly looking like, who is going to be that person? In high school, for me, it was my volleyball coach, who was a francophone white man, and I was an anglophone Indigenous girl, but we clicked. And so I relied on him heavily, and I asked for his advice often, and I still put his advice to work through my life. I'm gentle with myself. So when I want to cry, when I need to cry, I have a good cry. Like when I say, oh, get back up, I don't mean you hit the ground and you bounce back up. When you need to lay down on your bed and close your door and cry, do it. And cry for everything. Cry for all that you're going through. Cry for all that your parents went through. Cry just for the practice of crying.
Yeah.
But eventually, you let that all come out of you, and then you wipe your nose and you dry your tears and get in your mirror. And this is not metaphorically, I mean literally. Stand in front of your mirror or sit in front of your mirror and look yourself in the eye and talk kindly to yourself and talk gently to yourself and start to really learn who you are. Like really look at yourself. And I don't mean physically, I mean look deep into your soul and give yourself a pep talk, because there are some people that don't have any allies in their lives. They weren't brought up being told that they're loved like I was. That means you have to be that for yourself. So, I think my biggest cope is that I let my sadness come when I need to. I have my cry when I need to. But then I quickly say to myself when I'm looking in the mirror, what am I going to get out of this? What am I going to learn from this? Because every time I have a good cry, I know that whatever happened is meant to teach me something. And then I say, okay, universe, what are you about to send me? Like a few years ago, Jean Gomeshi got fired from CBC. I was asked to audition for his job. I wanted that job so bad. I put it out to the whole country that I wanted that job so bad. I nailed my audition. I had the best listener feedback. They said to me, we want someone who we can mold to fit the show, and you're already fully formed, so it's not going to work with you. We're giving the job to Shad. And I was mortified. I thought, I wanted that so bad. Now the whole country sees me fail. 2 hours later, my phone rings. It's Jonathan Torrens, better known as J-Rock from the Trailer Park Boys. And he said, thank goodness you didn't get Q. We wrote a character for you all through season 10. You're in every single episode. And when we heard you got that audition, we thought, she's not going to come and do the show. So I went from feeling so low and so broken to, a week later, I'm sitting next to Tom Arnold and Snoop Dogg, and we're discussing sneakers. So even in the darkest depths, you have to be convinced and accept that better days are always coming. As hard as it might be wherever you are, better days are coming. And every time you fall down, every time you have to cope, and you do, get back in that mirror and say, good on you. Understand that every time you do that, that is like a muscle. You get stronger and stronger and stronger. And eventually, like I'm at the point now where when I'm tripping, before I even hit the ground, I've already got my eyes open looking for what's coming next. Because I just know, I know in my place of knowing that whenever I'm down, it's not forever. And I also know the only way to the other side is through. I can't avoid the pain. I can't avoid the failure. I can't avoid any of that. I have to go through it and I have to sit with it. I also think we don't have to push our pain away. You know, be that. Rilke is a great philosopher, and he said, let me squander not my hour of suffering. So I think suffering is also a gift on some level. It teaches us a lot. And so all that has gone into my little coping knapsack that allows me to see my way through those rough waters as I'm navigating this boat through some pretty exciting times. It's been 52 fabulous years, I got to tell you. The hard times and the good times. I've loved every minute of it.
Thank you so much. My next question I wanted to ask is, do you have any other goals you'd like to achieve? Because in your story, I keep hearing you wanted to be a lawyer, then you wanted to be a comedian. Is there anything else that's in the candy knapsack ready to come out?
My memoir is going to come out in October of 21. I have a number in my mind that I want that number of copies that I want sold on that. So I'm working really hard on my final edits on that book right now. And I want that book to move people. When the Candy Show first made its way to APTN, my dream of the Candy Show was a nighttime, like 5 days a week, just like the Tonight Show in the United States, but here in Canada. So the Candy Show, when it aired, APTN doesn't have that kind of money. So it was a once a week variety series, but I have not let go of the dream of 5 nights a week coming into your living room through a Canadian television station, doing a nightly show, music, live bands, that whole bit. That's in my little knapsack as well. Two major goals that I've had that I still haven't been able to get, but I'm still going after. I want to host the Junos and I want to host the Giller Awards. So I just constantly, in writing the book, my editor said to me, because I wrote a paragraph that said, like, I'm running down a dream and that dream is out ahead of me and I know it's mine. And I get real close to it sometimes. Sometimes I just catch a glimpse when it's going around a corner and I almost have it in my hands and then I'll trip. But I get up and I keep going after it. And the editor said, well, but you're living your dream. And I said, no. Every time I get to a place that I have dreamt about, I dream a bigger dream. I dream a bigger dream because it takes a lot of work. It takes more than just dreaming it, but if you can't dream it, you will not be it. So whenever someone says to me, Candy, growing up as a little Indigenous kid in Northern New Brunswick, your father couldn't read or write. Did you ever dream you could be a lawyer? Yep. Oh, did you ever dream you were going to have your own national television show or that, you could walk through an airport and people would know your name? Yep. Yeah. Sure did. Because that's how I manifested it. That I have to dream it and then I write it down and then I look at it in bite-sized chunks. I'm here. I want to get here. What do I have to do? And now I write it out and then I go to work. But I accept I might not get here. But let me tell you, I'm going to have some fun on the way. So I will always be dreaming a bigger dream for myself. I hope I never, ever actually fully get to a place where I say I'm good here.
Yeah, yeah.
And when I die on my tombstone, I just wanted to say, at least she tried.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, Candy.
My pleasure.
All right. That's going to wrap up our event today. Candy, thank you so much for your stories, for sharing, with the students of Mohawk about your childhood and your culture and pretty much your entire path. I think, we use this as a platform to educate and share, and I hope students who are watching can take something away but also follow your journey as well, and hopefully we've created some new fans for you here at Mohawk College.
I hope so. And I'm blasting glitter-covered candy kisses out to everybody. No matter where you are, understand that my good vibes are coming to meet you wherever you're at.
On behalf of the Mohawk Student Association, and Garrett and Alicia and Doreen, and everybody that was a part of this event tonight, thank you so much. We wish you all the best, and keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
All right.
Have a good year.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.